So first of all, let's define the banking book. There's a book by my friend Paul Newson, published by Risk, which defines it thus. I define it slightly differently in my book, but it's always good to see what other people are describing items and disciplines as. To quote him, he says, there is no direct or explicit regulatory definition of the banking book. That's correct. I would define the banking book as the customer balance sheet. But from an accounting perspective, one needs to be probably a little bit more precise. And so the regulator says anything that is a trading book is banking book. And then it goes on to define the trading book. Okay? Now, the Basel standards for a trading book state that it would be items on the book, the balance sheet, that were held or purchased for short-term resale. They profited from short-term movements in the price, and these were realized by the asset being traded, or it was locking in arbitrage profits. An original description or definition, I should say, of arbitrage is of a risk-free trade. I know people use that slightly differently this time. And also, trading book is any hedging activities that arise from the above three items. So that's trading book. Everything that wasn't those four items would be banking book. Of course, the last item, hedging risks, lots of banks will do that don't have a trading book. So they will use instruments such as derivatives to hedge their banking book market risk exposure. But then these instruments have to be daily mark to market, which means they're not, the bank is still not operating a trading book, but those instruments aren't accounted for on an accruals basis like the banking book does. And the key point about a banking book is there is no daily mark to market, daily revaluation of the assets and liabilities in the banking book. Here's a little extract from Mr. Newson's book that shows what's explicitly banking book and what's explicitly trading book. And there's a little grey area there in the middle, which could be either. Although, to be honest, other than the last item in the grey box, the derivatives one, all the others could be in the banking book and most commonly are. Money market activity like issuance or purchase and issuance of certificates of deposits, or holding of the liquid asset securities like government bonds, they go in something called the FVOCI, fair value through other comprehensive income accounting treatment, but that is still banking book. So really, it's only the last item that one could say is grey, and generally it's still treated as a trading book item, even for a bank that doesn't have a trading book. Here's a quote from my friend Patrick Carey. I've got lots of friends I'm quoting here. He has a definition of the trading book and the banking book boundary. Okay, FRTB is the Basel III guidance on fundamental review of the trading book, and it replaces this intent to trade criterion from pre-Basel III era with the actual economic point of the activity. And if it is to trade, in other words, a short-term holding, then it's a trading book. Okay. Generally, there has to be a clear distinction, clear blue water. Well, not generally, explicitly, there has to be a clear blue water between trading book and banking book items, and you can't transfer from one book to the other. And that is to ensure that there's no regulatory capital impact of such transfers. You need regulatory approval if you're going to do a transfer, and there can be no capital benefit. By benefit, we read reduction in as a result of a transfer. Okay, so risk transfer is also identified in the FRTB guidance, but it's a little bit ambiguous on interest rate risk transfer. Let's have a look at the next slide. FRTB friendly means you don't have any. You have an explicit separation. I should say you should have an explicit separation between hedging activity of the business, which your treasury function undertakes, and any trading book activity that it does with the market. So the top arrangement is what the regulator would like to see. Now, of course, a bank that didn't have a trading book, and lots of banks don't, lots of banks only have a banking book. A bank that didn't have a trading book, there would be no such issue, because the boundary, there would be no grey area for the boundary. If you do have a trading book, then there should be a clear separation between activities of the hedging function, where it's hedging, of the market access, market-facing function, where it's hedging bank's business line activity, and where it's undertaking its own trading book activity, including hedging. Okay, so and the below arrangement does muddy that up, which is why the top arrangement is what a bank needs to be adopting if it hasn't already. A bank that does not hedge interest rate risk directly with the market must set up a ring-fenced risk transfer desk, which is exactly what that bottom one in the previous slide should be moving to if it hasn't already.